Hey everybody, today is day one of the 21 days of healing. I'm so happy that you're joining in to watch this entire series. We're going to be going through some amazing stuff throughout the course of the next 21 days. So I want to break down what you can expect so that you know exactly what it is that you're getting yourself into before we actually start our session today, which is going to be all about past lives. So over the course of the next 21 days, you are going to be introduced to 20 amazing healers. Every one of these healers has different gifts, and their gifts are really wide in scope. So there's so many different pathways to healing. I want you to experience as many of them as possible. I brought in top experts from around the globe, not even just the country. We have experts coming in from Australia, from the UK, from all parts of the US, from Canada, and these women are incredible. You're going to be in for such a treat. Every day, someone's going to be going live talking about their area of expertise, and they're going to help you to understand it a bit more. If you have any questions as you go along throughout the course of the 21 days, do not hesitate to ask. This is your chance to fully dive into your own healing. Depending on which day it is, some of the healers are going to be offering mini trainings. Some are going to be doing full experiences. Some are going to be doing workshops. Hey guys. And for anybody who is watching the replay, don't worry, you can still ask questions. Just make sure that you put them right into the comment section below in the live that you want to ask questions about, and preferably tag the person who is speaking so they can answer you directly, or you can just bring my attention to it too. But I'm so excited to actually start this day with you guys. For anybody who is watching live, thank you so much for joining, obviously. I have something exciting to share with you all. Throughout the next 21 days, if you post about this event using the hashtag 21 days of healing and you tag me at IAM Danielle Massi, you are going to be entered to win some amazing prizes. There's going to be 2 prizes that are going to happen, so 2 winners at the end of it. And every single time you post about it, whether it's in your stories or in your Facebook stories or in your Facebook feed or in your Instagram feed, you're going to be entered to win. At the end, we're just going to do a raffle. I'm going to pick 2 names out of a hat, but every time you do it, you get another entry. So it's definitely recommended to post like crazy. Some of the winners are going to get things like Shadow Seeker swag, amazing gifts like candles from Sovereign Soul Medicine and from Jackie Whitaker Gioso, who is one of my Create Your Light Academy alumni. I've got books from Courtney Hansen within. There's the Shadow Seeker's Journal, sage spray, crystals. You guys have so much yummy stuff to come. Mystical Blossoms gave a whole box worth of amazing goodies from their shop here in New Jersey. So definitely make sure that you post about it every single day. That way you're entered as many times as possible so that you can win one of those amazing prizes at the end. I didn't even come close to naming all of them. I'll make sure that one of these days I actually go through and show you guys all the amazing gifts that there are, because you're going to want to take one of these gift bags home. They're insane. Pamela Chen's book. I could go on forever about this. So now that you guys know the giveaway and you know what to expect for the next 21 days, I want to get into one of my favorite topics, and that is past lives. The reason why I wanted to kick off this entire series with past lives is because when I told you guys about 2 months ago about, just the beginning, feeling like I wanted to do an event like this, I asked what it was that you guys wanted to learn about. I said, there's no limit on the topic. Give me everything. Tell me what you want to hear about. And past lives won by a landslide. So obviously that excites me because this is my fun space. I love past lives. But I figured it'd be the best way to start off the whole process of the 21 days of healing. And it's a super fun topic. So any questions that you guys have, if you're watching live, just pop them right into the comments. I'll try to answer as we go, but I might end up saving the questions for the end depending on how this kind of runs itself. So let's get right into it and begin by talking about past lives. So this topic is widely debated by a lot of people, and there's one major reason for it. And that is because time is not as linear as we think. Now, this might be a little bit of a big thing to cover, but I do want to start with this because I think it's really important. When we think about time, we've been taught to think about it in a very linear fashion. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. You're born, you live, you die. And that's the way we've been taught to see the trajectory of our lives, very linearly. But what I see and what other experts within this sphere have seen is that time is not as linear as you think it is. In fact, it's almost more like a piece of paper that's been folded in on itself. And the reason why we're so easily able to access our past lives is because it's almost like they're happening simultaneously to this one. Time is not linear. And so if we are kind of existing up here on this plane, when we do past life work, all we're doing is dipping into the center and moving down some layers to access whatever it is that's underneath and pulling it back up. It makes accessing past lives really easy. So with that said, let's talk about why past lives are important. Every single one of us, I'm probably going to do that like 10 times throughout this. I have a shitty desk in here. I'm getting a new one. The reason why past lives are important is because everything that you have ever experienced, literally everything your soul has ever gone through, lives within your brain. Now, I know that you've heard the statistic before about how most of our brain goes unused, like 90% of our brain is unused space. I used to hate hearing that statistic because I feel like it's bullshit. And yet, science does show that the majority of information that you take in, you remember, but you don't recognize that you remember it. Reason being is because it goes into the unconscious mind. We have 3 levels to our consciousness. At the very top is your conscious mind. This is the stuff you're fully aware of. Like, you know that you're sitting here watching this talk right now. You know what you ate for breakfast or lunch today. You know what it is that you have to get done later on. And that is really important because that accounts for the least amount of your brain's activity. Underneath that is the subconscious mind. This is just below the surface of your awareness. And the stuff that exists within the subconscious mind is more behavioral. It's like scrolling through your phone and you could kind of zone out, like you're not really paying attention. You're there, but you're not there. It's when you're looking for something and it's right in front of you because you're just dishabituated to it. You forgot that it's happening. It's your habits, the automatic things that you do every single day. It's driving to work without actually having to pay attention because when you get into the car, your body knows where to take you, right? Yeah, Janie, it's so widely researched. It's really important too. Then underneath that subconscious, and the subconscious is where most of us spend our time. It's where we think we're really helping ourselves. Like, I'll change my behaviors, I'll change my habits, but it's not actually getting to the root. The root is your unconscious mind. And this actually accounts for 94% of your brain's activity. Your unconscious mind is the stuff that you have no idea is there. It's completely out of your awareness. I studied cognitive neuroscience in undergrad, and I remember one of my professors told me that every single license plate you've ever seen throughout your life, your brain actually remembers. If you needed to recall it, you could, but why would you think to? It's not something that's readily available. And so what happens is the brain stores that in its junk closet, the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is so full of information. It is like bursting at the seams. It's the reason why information comes to us in our dreams, because when you're dreaming, you're in what's called theta brainwave state, which is where we need to be to access both past lives and the unconscious, because your past lives are in your unconscious mind. So when you're sleeping, stuff just comes through. It bubbles right up to the surface, like that junk closet drawer is just opened up and it comes shooting out. And it's also why you might get flashback memories of things, like a certain smell will trigger a memory, or hearing a certain song will make you think of something. Sensory stuff, because your body remembers everything. Sensory stuff will awaken unconscious memories in you and kind of bring them to the surface. So how does this have to do with past lives? Our past lives are all stored within our unconscious mind. When you're born, you are born with a memory of your past lives, especially the one that was most recent to this one. You're born remembering them. And what happens is over time you forget. And the brain is interesting in that it's intelligent. It wants to have information readily available that you're going to use. And so if something isn't going to be used right away, it hides it, puts it out of the way. This is why people who start playing the piano when they're really young, or they learned a second language when they're really young, they can become more fluent at those things because the brain understands it needs to have that information at the ready, so it makes more space for it. So if it doesn't need something, it hides it. It pushes it into the unconscious. There's other reasons why stuff ends up in the unconscious as well. Stuff like trauma. And trauma is a big topic. I could have a whole day just to talk about trauma. But anything that the body feels is too heavy to carry, anything the mind feels like it can't reconcile, will end up in the unconscious because it's deemed too sensitive for you to deal with. The brain doesn't know how you're going to respond. So all that information ends up in the unconscious, and your past lives, which are a huge part of who you are and why you're here, end up in the unconscious mind, within your shadow, which is the other name for the unconscious mind. So when we are doing this kind of work, when we're going into your past lives, what we want to do is bring that stuff to the surface. We want to actually go back and see it and re-experience it. We want you to see it so clearly with all of your senses, smelling it, feeling it, tasting it, touching it, being immersed in it, so that what happens is it is able to be impacted by the brain. So let's just say you have a past life that was heavily traumatic, like you died in a plane accident in World War II because you were a pilot. And your plane goes down and you don't die right away and you're bleeding out on the floor and there are people watching you from the local farm that kind of ran over to see you. And that trauma is stuck within your body. What happens is you died in that time, you're born in this one, say you were born in 1984, and you're born with a fear. Now that fear could be different depending on how that past life went for you and how the past lives before that went for you. But we know that there's a fear there. And so what we need to do is we need to go back to that moment. We need to bring you to it so that you can experience it again. But the most important piece of past life work is that when you are re-experiencing it, we have to change how you react to it. Instead of feeling what you might have felt the first time, which I've never been in a plane crash, but if I had been, I would imagine that my heart would be beating out of my chest, that adrenaline and cortisol would be pumping through my body to try and get me into that fight or flight mode. I'd probably be terrified because I would know that something was really wrong, that I could potentially die from this. And as all of that is going through the body and all of it is pumping and moving, what's happening is it's creating that memory really deeply. So when we re-experience it through a past life regression, we want to do the opposite. We want to keep your physical vessel, this body that you have, really calm. We want to keep you breathing steadily. We want to notice if you're feeling that tension, like if you start to feel yourself clam up, your shoulders are creeping up to your ears. If you start to feel like you can't handle it anymore, we bring you down. We calm you as you re-experience it. And when you do this and you actually go through it and have that full experience, and you can change the way that your body is reacting to it, what will happen is your entire life will start to change because you're no longer going to be triggered by anything that pertains to that past life memory. Now, there's a couple of key things I want to bring up with past lives. One is that I'm always on the lookout for karmic loops, and I'll explain what those are. The other one is I'm always on the lookout for trauma. So trauma is the one I'm going to talk about first because we're kind of on that path with talking about a plane accident. Trauma for anyone is any moment that your body feels overwhelmed and your brain doesn't know how to keep the information. It doesn't know how to store it. This does not have to be a plane crash or being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It doesn't have to be something that is that intense or life-altering. I know PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, we usually think about trauma as something huge and catastrophic. But trauma does not have to be that intense and that big. Trauma can actually be quite small. Think about children. When you're a kid, you are really egocentric. You're supposed to be. That's how childhood works. Your brain before the age of 7 perceives everything as having to do with you. Like literally the world revolves around you. I don't know if you guys have ever had a memory like this, but when I was a kid, I used to think like everybody was kind of like an actor playing a role in my life. Like obviously they were all here to just be there for me. I didn't think about the fact that they had stuff going on or that they were their own people. At the age of 7 and younger, sometimes 6 and younger, depending on how the brain is developing, you are egocentric, which means that if anything heavier happens, you're going to blame yourself because obviously everything revolves around you before that age. So trauma in children can look like having the ice cream off your ice cream cone fall. It can honestly be that small. I know I say it like I'm almost joking because it's cute to think about that with a kid, but it can feel like getting run over by a truck when you're 4 years old and that happens. Your body switches into fight or flight. So we start to see that adrenaline and cortisol pumping through your body, your heart rate picking up, your palms getting sweaty, butterflies in your stomach, your head getting cloudy. Anything that feels heavy can really make you feel that way, where it feels like trauma. And all it takes for something to be traumatic is for it to feel traumatic. This can also be breakups. Think about your first relationship that you ever had. Maybe it was your first love. Maybe it was your first relationship. Think about how you felt when it ended. Maybe it was heavy. Maybe you were embarrassed. Maybe you felt ashamed. Maybe you were angry at the other person. All those emotions sit within your body, and it can create trauma, or at the very least, it can create a story. In your mind, you start to see things differently because of the experiences that you've had. There's something called the subconscious feedback loop that happens throughout our bodies. We have experiences, so all the sensory stuff, you're taking that in. Those experiences create a chemical reaction within the brain, and that is information that is sent down to the body. Those chemicals, also known as emotions, are sent down to the body, and when they reach the body, they inform the body of how to respond. So it tells the body, should the heart rate pick up? Should your palms become sweaty? Where does the blood flow need to go? And when that happens, the brain has to get a message back up from the body through the enteric nervous system to understand how to complete the loop. So what happens is the body tells the brain how to think. I know we usually think about it more as a top-down process, but it is a bottom-up one. Your brain is told how to think. What is it that I need to think about this so I can inform future experiences? So let's take the little kid who has the ice cream cone where the ice cream falls off of it. You're 4 years old, you finally got your ice cream, you were waiting for it all day, and boop, just falls onto the floor. That experience creates emotions within the brain, chemical reactions. So we have a lot of negative emotions coming up that sends a message down to the body to send that heart rate up. Your head's gonna get a little foggy, palms sweaty, butterflies, maybe even feelings of tears welling up, like you can feel it coming up. That sends a thought in about everything's ruined, I'm bad, something is wrong. That informs future experiences where when something goes wrong, that same reaction is going to repeat. It starts a chain reaction. That is how every neural pathway in your brain forms itself. Experiences, emotions, physical reactions, thoughts, repeat. And this happens over and over and over and over. So the reason why this is important is because if we know that 94% of your brain's capacity is stuff you have no idea about, that means that all those reactions, those subconscious feedback loops, are created by stuff you have no idea is there. You have no idea why your personality is the way that it is, or what behaviors you are really readily sharing. You have no idea why it's happening, and yet it happens anyway. With past life work, we can get to the root cause of it because we can actually go back to the moments where the first experience happened. The first one that starts that chemical reaction, that chain reaction of events that make your body respond the way that it does. And throughout my time of doing this work, which has been about the past 4 or 5 years, I have seen miraculous things when I've done past life work. When we go back and we experience those original moments, it's like everything clicks. Because all the stuff you think about yourself now, like, oh, I'm an introvert, I couldn't do that stuff, or I don't like to share, that might not actually be because you're naturally introverted. It might be because you have a past life where you spoke out and stood up for yourself, and maybe you died because of it. Maybe it was the end of your life. Maybe a relationship ended because of that. Maybe you were disowned. So when we re-experience it for the first time, and we change everything, when we go back in and we can really rework all of this stuff within your system, we can change your entire life. So I told you the first thing I wanted to talk about was trauma. So there's that one. Next is karmic loops. Karmic loops are something that I've noticed when I've done past life work with people before. This is that you go through the exact same experience, packaged up differently throughout your lifetimes, over and over and over again until you learn the lesson. So let's just say in this lifetime, you have a really hard time with relationships with women. It just never works out well. You feel like people are always talking behind your back, and you just keep seeing it play out over and over again throughout this life. Anytime I see an experience that repeats itself over and over in this life, I know that there's a past life connection to it. And so what might happen is you go back to a past life and find yourself in the 1500s, living in England during a time where people were starting to be nervous about witchcraft and healers and stuff like that. And a woman rats you out about the fact that you've been picking herbs and using them to heal other people. You find yourself getting hanged, and here we go. That's the beginning of deep mistrust within your body. And that repeats until you heal it. And that's a karmic loop. With karmic loops, we're given so many opportunities to heal it. Every time people come into your life who recreate those circumstances, that's an opportunity for growth and for healing. It's not meant to bring you down. It's not meant to be something that actually hurts you. It's meant to be something that helps you. But you have to recognize it for what it is instead of just sitting within your trigger, instead of just letting it cause turmoil within your body. So let's take this exact same example of the person who feels like they can't be around women, they don't trust them, all that stuff. If we know this is a karmic loop because we saw that past life, what we have to do now is really look at the relationships she has with women and start to change them. Start to realize where the mistrust comes from and how do we actually change that subconscious feedback loop that I was talking about before. The experiences, the emotions, the physical reactions, and then the thoughts. If we can interrupt that feedback loop, we can change how she sees relationships with women, heal that karmic loop, and have it never come up throughout any lifetime ever again. Now, I promise you this stuff repeats over and over again. If you don't fix it, it will come up again. I'm actually in the process of writing a book right now on shadow work, and I'm in the middle of my chapter where I talk about karmic loops. And one of the ones that I talk about is one that I actually share with my father and my grandmother, who's his mother. Now, in a past life, I saw a full experience where he was my father, but she was my mother. And remember, with past lives, our souls don't always occupy the same roles for each other. Like if you have a husband in this life, he might have been your brother in a past life, or a cousin, or just a friend, or maybe he was a female. Our genders change throughout lifetimes. So whatever position they take, don't put too much stress on that. When I saw this past life, what I saw was that my dad had told the people in town that my mother, who is my grandmother now, was a witch, and she was accused of witchcraft and was hung because of it. I was around 6 or 7 years old in the memory, and I could see myself sitting on the floor playing with these like raggedy looking dolls. They're kind of creepy actually, but I think dolls looked like that back then. And people were coming towards the door. I could hear her singing as she was cooking something until the voices started to come. They banged on the door. She opened it. They dragged her out of there after kind of slapping her to the floor, picking her up, dragging her out. And I asked my guides afterwards, like, why did I see that? What was the purpose for it? Because remember, when we do past life work, it's never random. We're never just seeing things to see them. We're seeing them for a reason. We're seeing them so that we can heal something. And what I heard from my guides was that there's multiple layers that needed to be healed from that particular past life. And a lot of them were karmic loops. One is that there was severe distrust between my dad and my grandmother, who were my mom and dad in that lifetime, obviously, because of what happened. Unfortunately, she's passed away now, and that's something they never healed. So they're going to end up playing out that loop again in a future life. They're going to have to go through this all over. So that's for them to deal with. Can't do anything about that now. Then there was also me needing to speak up and use my voice. At around 6 years old, which is how old I think I was in that past life, I didn't have the capability of standing up for my mom and doing something about it. Plus my gender would have really gotten in the way at that time, even if I was older. And authority, trusting men, all that stuff. That all became a karmic loop for me in this lifetime, where it was very important for me to be able to stand up to my dad and tell him how I felt and assert my dominance and make it so that we could become peers. And that actually has been resolved, but it was not so easy before I realized through this past life that it needed to be done. You see, past life work is really cool because it shows us, it's like a blueprint for what it is that we need to do here. It doesn't always have to be negative either. Sometimes with past life work, you will find a karmic loop that is actually a positive thing, something that you've done in a past life that you were meant to do again. What I'm referring to is your soul's purpose. Now, generally, like the most basic purpose that all of us have is just to come here to grow, to learn from what we've done and to expand, and that's it. But sometimes our souls have a purpose that's a little bit more than that, a little bit more elaborate. And that purpose might have to do with expanding other people's ability to grow and expand, which almost always, from what I find, is one of the big soul purposes that we have. And so stepping into the role of someone who can do those things is easier when you go back to your past lives and see how you've done it before. Almost always the roles that you've taken throughout past lives are the ones that you will take again. One of my favorite examples of this is that in my group program, Create Your Light Academy, I tend to draw in a lot of people who are nurses. The reason why I think that is because nurses are naturally so empathic. They take on so much emotion, they take on so much of other people's energy, and they find themselves needing to do shadow work because they don't know how to hold all of that intensity. They need to create boundaries, they need to do shadow work to raise their vibration, they need to create some systems. So shadow work is perfect for nurses. And almost every time I have a nurse who comes into Create Your Light Academy, we do a past life regression, and guess where we find her? As a nurse in some other lifetime, whether it is like a nurse in World War I or finding her doing healing work in Native American tribes, we always find her in that role. And it's because it's her soul's purpose. It's something she just was born knowing how to do. For all of you guys who are watching live, you might have something that you feel like this with. Like when you talk to people, you just know this is the work that you're meant to do. Or if you stand up on a stage and address people, you just know in your bones that's where you're meant to be. Or maybe you're a nurse and you find that healing people is where you feel the most at home. That's one of the cool things about past life work. There's going to be certain instances and things that you encounter in this life that are going to feel like home. And when you encounter them, it's definitely because you've had a past life doing it. It's like a deja vu moment. Like your whole body just kicks in knowing exactly what it's supposed to do there. It feels like home. And there might be other times that it feels the opposite. Like it feels so out of the realm of normalcy that it's like it doesn't sit well with you. You don't really know how to deal with it. So just things to watch for as you go through this process. Now, during a past life regression, something that you guys should know is the process of how it works. If you want to tap into your past lives, you need to access the unconscious mind. Now, remember I told you earlier, the unconscious mind is 94% of your brain's capacity, and it is accessed by getting to what are called theta brainwaves. Theta brainwaves are just really spaced out, nice, easy brainwaves, which means that your brain isn't hyperactive, you're not thinking a lot, you're not going into that intense mode. Your body is very relaxed. Your autonomic nervous system switches into rest and digest. You are calm. And the time that we're most often in that place where we're in a theta brainwave state is when we're just getting ready to drift off to sleep. So think about like when your head hits the pillow and you're still awake, but you're really relaxed, like you could drift off at any minute. That's theta brainwave state. And that's where you need to be to open up the unconscious mind to access shadow or past lives in particular. So the process of doing shadow work or doing past life work is quite similar. What we do is we meditate to get you to that state where you're just in between waking and sleeping. And when you're there, you're still fully conscious. Like you could get up and walk away at any moment. You could take a sip of tea. You could pick up your phone and do stuff. It's not like you're out or under hypnotism. You are fully still you and able to remember everything that happens. You're just a little drifty, a little sleepy. Once you're there, we call upon spirit guides to really make sure that you're safe through the process, because the stuff that you see is probably going to be hard. I find that the first time that you do shadow work or you do past life work, it's not like you're dropping into something really fun and exciting. It's almost always something that your soul's like, finally, we can help them heal from this. Like, they're here, let's get everything out, right? So when you actually get the chance to see a past life, it's almost always something heavier that your soul's been carrying for a long time. So we want to bring in those spirit guides to hold the space and keep you safe, to make sure that your body remains calm, that they're protecting your energy, that you are really secure in that process. Now, if you've never worked with spirit guides before, this is a whole nother conversation, but I'll give you a really general overview. Our spirit guides are any spirits that are connected to us and are here for our highest and greatest good. Sometimes that's animals, sometimes it's loved ones that have passed on, like a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle that you were very close to, or a friend that passed away if they passed away young. If you have deities or gods and goddesses, a lot of people work with Mary Magdalene, Mary, Jesus. We have gods and goddesses like Isis, Hades, Persephone, Athena, gods, goddesses, Kali Ma, like it doesn't matter. Whoever it is that feels right for you. You can also work with what's called your higher self. Your higher self is you, except it's your soul from every life that you've ever lived. Your higher self knows everything your soul has ever been through, and it knows everything that your soul is still able and capable of doing, because the future is not set in stone. It's like a series of pathways. Because you have your higher self, they'll know where to take you within a past life because they know what's most important to you and to your soul's healing. Like if there's any karmic loops that need to be addressed or particular traumas that are really weighing heavy on your physical body. So calling upon spirit guides. And also, just to throw this out there, you don't have to know who they are. You just have to know how they make you feel. If they make you feel safe and supported, maybe they look like white light. Maybe they are just an energy that makes you feel good. You can bring them in and they will help you on that journey. Janie says, I have a book called Journey of Souls, which is actually one of my favorite books. Journey of Souls was written by Dr. Michael Newton. He talks about this process. There's other books too, like Dolores Cannon has a bunch of works like Between Death and Life. Yes, I said that in the right direction. I know it should sound like Between Life and Death, but it's Between Death and Life. There's also Dr. Brian Weiss and his book, Many Lives, Many Masters. These are all really helpful tools, and they'll explain all this stuff in depth. Not to mention my book that's coming out next year, which I promise will have all of this information in a really in-depth way. But back to what we were getting at, the spirit guides. We want to call them in to hold the safe space. Once you're meditated and you're at that theta brainwave point and your spirit guides are there, what we do is we set the intentions to see a past life that will be really healing for you, one that is for your highest and greatest good for you to see. And what happens then is we want to just get you to the point where you're able to see it. So when I work with people in Create Your Light Academy, which is my group shadow work program, what I do is I help them build up their gifts of clairvoyance, clairsentience, and clairaudience before we start to do this work so that they can see it so clearly. All of you have those gifts. If you think you don't, you're wrong. You totally do. You just don't realize that you have them or you've been afraid of them in the past. Fear stops us from being able to fully tap into those things. And most of the time you write it off because you think other people are seeing or hearing what you are. Like if you see a shadow out of the corner of your eye or you hear floors creaking, you assume everybody's hearing them and it's like the house shifting, but it might be a spirit that's stepping through the room, but you're not saying anything about it. So you just don't realize no one else is hearing it. All of us have those gifts, and when they're strong, what will happen when we get to this point is you will start to see your past life come into view just as easily as seeing any memory. Like think about a banana. If you guys can all picture a banana in your minds right now, keep your eyes open and just picture it in the back of your mind. You can see the color, you can see the shape. You might notice that there's some discoloration on it, like maybe it's not perfect, or maybe it's more cartoony, like maybe it looks like someone drew it like a caricature. However it is that it's being represented in your mind, that's how you recall past lives. It's also how you daydream or how you remember memories. When you're accessing those memories, it'll come to you that easily because you're not building something new. Your brain isn't conjuring up stuff you haven't seen before. It's just reawakening pathways that are already there. so that you can see in full detail everything that you've already experienced. And when we do past life work, we really want to pay attention to all the sensory details, the colors, the shades of colors in between, the smells, the sounds, the views. When you have all those senses engaged, your brain is really activating those old neural pathways, which means when we find whatever it is that we're looking for, the karmic loop or the trauma, whatever it is that we're in there to heal, we have access to all the neural pathways that created those certain reactions in the first place, and we can interrupt them by interrupting that subconscious feedback loop that we talked about before. And that's when we do our best work. That's when past life work is everything. So obviously, based on everything that I've said, past life work for me is always about healing and it's about growth. But let's be honest, it's also kind of cool to just know where your soul has been, what it's done, who you were, because sometimes you were people who were exciting. It's awesome. So I want to do something fun with you guys today, since we can't do a full-blown past life meditation. What I want you to do, if you have the ability to, is to pull out a piece of paper and a pen. Or if you're on your phone, pull out the notes section, just somewhere that you can jot some stuff down, because I'm going to show you guys how to start recognizing your past lives in your everyday life. Yay. All right, so go grab those, take a minute to do so, and I'll just explain the exercise. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you guys some journal prompts to start to examine past lives that you have had. And when you answer these questions, you're going to start to uncover your own past lives. They're going to be so obvious that when you hear them, you're going to be like, oh, duh, why did I never think about that? Or you might have aha moments of, oh my gosh, that's why I've always been obsessed with this thing. This is just to get you open to some of the past lives that you had. And once you are, it's going to be easier to fully experience them when you do have a full-blown past life regression. So if you have somewhere to write and you're ready for it, the first question that I put down is, when you were in school and you were in history class, what subjects were the most exciting for you? It might be one, it might be multiple, but just think about like most high school classes, like most people are falling asleep and not paying attention. They don't really care what's going on. Most of the information's like outdated and you know that it's from the perspective of the winners, so you're keeping it at arm's length. But there was something that made you feel like, ooh, I want to know more about that. Maybe it was the French Revolution. Maybe it was Native American culture. Maybe it was feudal China. What piqued your interest? Just write down the journal prompts and spend some time on it later, really thinking it through and letting it marinate a little bit. But that's question number one. For me, it was always ancient Egypt. Okay, question number two. What historically based books, movies, and TV shows are you drawn to? So for instance, if you're really obsessed with the Outlander series, or if you are really, really drawn into stuff about outer space and you love anything to do with space, which for the record could be a past life as a starseed. If you feel that you're always watching shows about the Tudors, like Rain, or literally the show called The Tudors, like anything along those lines, pay attention to the media you consume, whether it's movies, TV shows, or books. There's a reason why you are drawn to certain ones. Some of them just feel like home. And for other people, they just like don't care. Like Andrea just said, totally Outlander. I said that one because I had a past life in 1600 Scotland. So that for me feels very much like home. It's almost like my soul recognizes it. Now, right now I'm watching the TV show Rain from the CW. I'm like really on a kick right now. And it's actually set in an earlier time period. And it's like all the stuff to do with the monarchy through France and Scotland. It doesn't have the same pull for me as Outlander does. But because of all the past lives I've seen from doing past life work, there's so many past lives from other people that I've seen in that time that it actually is kind of intriguing. Just more of an outside thing. It doesn't feel like home in the same way. Angela said Fringe is a show that I'm so drawn to. The topics they talk about are intriguing for me. Yeah, anything that pulls your attention. Christy said she's always been drawn to Mary, Queen of Scots. There's probably a reason. Because for most people, they're like, okay, like whatever she does, we don't really care. Jack, you said SVU, Criminal Minds type shows. You might have been someone who worked in that field before, which would explain a lot of your interest now, especially since I know what you're interested in outside of this. Pay attention. Yeah, Westerns. Samantha said Westerns. I don't give a shit about Westerns. It does nothing for me because I have no connection to them. Never had a past life in the West. Never had any connection to it. Don't care. If it matters to you, it means there's a past life connection there, so pay attention. Okay, so the last one is in a similar vein. The question that I want you to jot down and answer for yourself later is, what cultures feel like home for you? So this one is really important for me because culturally, especially in older times, right now our culture is a little bit weird with the internet and everything else. Like, culture spread, it's not as secluded and specific as it used to be. Culture was everything before the 1800s. You were who you were living with. You were the group that you were around. Those were your people, and that was all you knew. So if there are certain cultures that you are now drawn to, there is a reason for it. So you have to pay attention to that. You have to really invest your energy in that. So think about what cultures you've always been drawn to. Like, if you were obsessed with Greek mythology, it was really important to you. You knew all the stories. You watched all the movies. You loved Hercules as a kid. You were always drawn to those older movies about the struggles of that time, Medusa. Maybe you had figurines. Maybe you really spent a lot of your time focused in on that information. There's a reason for it, so pay attention. Really pay attention. I love all these answers coming through. Jamie said Hindu culture. Alexa said Middle Eastern and Indian cultures, especially the music and the dance. When we connect into those things, it's a remembrance. Your body does not forget things the way the mind does. You know how I told you guys earlier that there's 3 levels to consciousness? There's the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. The body does not have the capability to sort information that way. For the body, everything is conscious, everything is aware. And so if your body reacts to certain kinds of music or images, it's because it remembers them. They feel like home. And that subconscious feedback loop that I was telling you guys about earlier, experiences that are taken in through your senses that create emotions, which travel down to the body, which create chemical reactions and chain reactions, which send a message back up in the form of a thought to the brain. That loop doesn't have to start in that order. Your body can be step 1, where you have a physical reaction to something that you see or that you hear or that you're experiencing with any of your senses, and it starts the loop in a different direction. The loop is a loop. It doesn't have to start at experiences. It can start anywhere. So pay attention. Okay, so that is everything that I'm going to give you guys in past lives. I want you to journal about that stuff, those 3 questions, and start to dig into where your past lives have been. And when you're ready, I would highly suggest having a past life regression session done. Now, I don't do them one-to-one anymore. I save all of my energy for the girls who go through my group program, Create Your Light Academy, which is open for enrollment right now. The next round begins in January. Past life work is deeply embedded into it, just because so much of what lies within your unconscious is a part of that information. So if you're interested in learning more, just send me a message after this is done. It is incredibly transformative work because we're going to those original moments, the source of anything that your soul is experiencing, and we change it and heal it from the ground up so that you become a different person. You are literally shaping yourself into whoever you want to be. So that's open for enrollment, but there's some other ways that you can work with me too. I have a collective called the Wellness Collective. It's a healing center in Philadelphia, PA, but we also work globally with people around the world. One of my Create Your Light Academy alumni is my onboard person for shadow work and past life regressions there. You can do a one-to-one session with her. Her name is Lindsay Zamiti. In order to sign up with her, all you would need to do is visit our website, wellnessbhl.com, and the link for that is in my bio. When you go there, you can book a one-to-one session with her and try out a past life regression session for yourself. Trust me, she's incredible. She's also a licensed mental health professional, so she knows how to hold safe space for your traumas as they come up. And you can bring this information to her and say, hey, I remember feeling this connection to these cultures. I remember the music and the sounds and the smells. I'm going to go see that past life. And when you set the intention, she can take you there. So I would highly recommend it. The other thing that I want to tell you guys is obviously we have the 21 days that are going to be going on for the next few weeks. On day 21, I'm going to be hosting a 3-hour-long VIP masterclass. And on that day, we are going to be just going in and doing some major energetic resets, some full body rehealing. And it's going to be on the winter solstice. So it's going to be so special and an amazing way to wrap up these 21 days. Make sure that you follow along for the full 21 days and comment, post, ask questions of all the healers. That way you get to see and experience everything that this has to offer. And post about the giveaways, or tag us, comment on social media about anything. Just post about the 21 days in your stories with the hashtag 21 days of healing. Tag me at IAM Danielle Massi, and you'll be entered to win all those amazing goodies that I told you guys about at the very beginning. Every single time that you post, literally every time, you're going to be entered to win the giveaways. And they are literally valued at a couple $1,000s. They are incredible. So I'm so excited that you guys all came along. I hope I answered all of your questions about past lives. I saw someone asked about dream work earlier, and we're not necessarily covering dream work in this, but if you want, I can cover it a little bit on the last day during the VIP day. So I'll add it to the list. All right, you guys, I love you all so much, and thank you for joining in. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.